Hello, you, my fellow mates of Generation Z. First of all, don't be a potato. Look around and learn what's happening in the world. Everyone keeps saying Gen Z is lost, they are unserious. Gen Z only care about pop culture, internet drama. So, as a fellow Gen Z representative, I'm here to talk about, or just in a casual sit down conversation, teach you about what's happening in the world drama that's going around. You need to learn because next time when someone talks about politics, world affairs, you are not dismissed. But what do you know? Do you even know what's going on around the world? Listen, stick to your Zara H&M sales. Do not meddle in world affairs. You can't give your opinion. If you're tired of listening all of these things, then I'm here to save. Also, you should not be ignorant of what's going on around the world. Yeah, I'm not very interested, मुझे ये सब नहीं पता यार. मुझे अच्छा लगता है मैं अपना रिलैक्स करूं, मेडिटेशन करूं, आर्ट एंजॉय करूं. Well, let me tell you, you cannot and you should not be ignorant about what's happening in the world. So, in order to save you from the embarrassment, I'm going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to discuss here a lot of what's happening around. I don't know if that's a word, but a lot of what's happening around. And today's topic is foreign policy. Why? Because due to the Middle East war that has been going on between Israel, US, and Iran, there is a lot of debates going on. A lot of debates. You must have already heard them. Today, I'm going to speak about specifically Indian foreign policy. I mean, it's getting called out left, right, and center. It has failed. Indian policymakers needs to stand up and condemn the Iran attack. They need to step up and stop the war. A lot of right-wing views, left-wing views. You must have heard all of them. A lot of brainwashing by Indian media, which you cannot trust. And a lot of them are asking today one question: should India change its foreign policy? Has India's foreign policy failed? How China's foreign policy is winning, how others' foreign policy are winning, but India has failed. Well, I'm not here to answer any of that question. I'm not an expert who would advise on how the foreign policy should be carried out. Rather, I'm here to teach you or talk to you about how India's foreign policy was shaped or how a country chooses its foreign policy. So let's get started. Okay. So, well, the story actually begins after World War One and World War Two, which were one of the biggest tragedies to humanity. Thousands of battles fought, millions men, women died, cities collapsed, economics collapsed, and that's when the world leader thought, if we go like this, there will be no end to it, and it will be a threat to humanity. And that is when they established the United Nations. The idea was simple: countries would respect each other's sovereignty, have dialogues instead of war, would trade with each other, would partner with each other, collaborate with each other in order to coexist peacefully. But the reality turned out to be completely different. Soon after the World War II ended, there was another war. That was Cold War, where there were two camps, the Soviet Union and the USA. Entire planet was again divided into two camps. And that's when the recently newly independent country, India, decided it will not align with any of the camps and it will not be crushed under the power of the bigger nations. Countries were forced to join either of the bloc. But under the leadership of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, India developed and shaped the non alignment movement. That is, India will not align with any one of the bloc, and it was at its peak was joined by more than 120 countries, and it's going on still today. So, however, geopolitics rarely allows idealistic ideas to remain unchanged. And there were events which unfolded later in India which forced this non alignment movement to change its course slightly, not very much. So, in 1962, the war with China, which is also called Sino India War, it laid open what security challenges India faced. How ready was India to compete with a massive nation like China? And later, in 1972, with the war with Pakistan or the Bangladesh Liberation War, again threatened India's sovereignty. That is when India signed a friendship and cooperation treaty with Soviet Union or the Russia. And this treaty was not a military alliance, it was a defensive alliance that Russia would support India in a time of crisis, and it has always like a good friend. Then came another blow to India's economy. It was the 1991 economy fallout, which everyone experienced it. And under Dr. Manmohan Singh, India carefully, calculatedly, walked through it. After 1991, the liberalization, globalization, India's approach towards foreign policy became really pragmatic and it centered around a nation's interest. India started putting more effort into securing its own interest and started becoming less idealistic. So, in 1991, India opened its markets to the world for trade, business, and it started having multipolar friendship alignments with various countries. Instead of non aligning with no one or aligning with particular one, India started maintaining multipolar alignment. That is, I'll give you three examples. It has strong ties with the Russia, but it has also very good trade partnership with USA. It has strong defense ties with Israel and also invested heavily in the Chabahar port of Iran. So that is what you call multi alignment. But India still follows non alignment. Well, that I have explained how India's foreign policy was shaped. Now, the question is how does a country chooses its foreign policy? Like, what kind of policy? If I'm a country, what kind of policy am I going to have? Does like a single person decide it? No. Foreign policy never depends upon a leader's morals or behavior. I cannot decide, like, I'm a very friendly person by nature, I would be very friendly with every nation. That cannot happen. Leaders do not wake up one day and realize, leaders do not wake up one day and realize this country is trending and we should call it out, its oppressors. No, it's decided by a lot of factors. I've already spoken about history. Whoever has history with whoever, I've already spoken about it. Now comes the second factor, that is geography. Yes, geography is a factor of deciding foreign policy. There's a famous theory in it I should tell you about. That is Mandala theory by Chanakya. He has written this in, I think, Arthasastra. What it says is neighbors will be enemy and neighbor's neighbor will be friend. You can check that out actually. I mean, you can check that for yourself. See our neighbors. So anyway, I think that theory, I don't know how much that theory is correct or not in India's case right now, but somehow to some extent it's India is surrounded by Pakistan, China, Bangladesh, and difficult terrain of Himalayas and the vast Indian Ocean, which is one of the busiest trade routes, and it has a lot of strategic importance. Nearly 80% of trade occurs from these routes, and India's ports play a very important role in them. Not only it provides India with trade opportunities, but also provides with security challenges. So my question is, when India is surrounded by Pakistan, Bangladesh, China, which are not very aligned with India's principles, do you think a country which is growing could aggressively pick sides? I mean, imagine the geography. You know the friendship with our neighbors. Do you think in such situation India can pick a side? I don't, like, I'm asking you the question. I really don't know the answer to it. But this is a factor to consider. In global politics, power is often decided by economy. This countries with stable, equal, and high economy can often aggressively stand for a side. But a country like India, where it's still growing, where the GDP distribution is not very equal, and it has trade deficits, it relies on energy, oil import from a lot of Gulf countries. Economic autonomy is still a question for India because India has not still yet achieved independent economy because India lacks in the department of energy, crude oil, rare earth minerals, which are required very much in this growing economy. So here is another question. Has India reached a level or strength where it can openly stand against any other country? Or can it survive independently with its economy? Now comes another factor that is called type of governance in the center. Yes, what type of government we are going to have determines kind of foreign policy. With autonomy or monarchical governments, it is more possible to take aggressive stance because they don't have to look after a lot of factors that democracy has to. India has democracy. It has to look after public opinion. It has to look after opposition. It has to look after relationship with other countries. Democracies also require support because in democracy, no idea is just a personal idea. It requires support, and it requires support of parliament in order to take form as a policy. So, another question: as large as India's democracy, do you think a foreign policy can be aggressive or risk taking? Can it be formed from a single idea, or it must always stay neutral and appease the people of India? Now, the most trending question that you are seeing on internet today: why India is not picking any sides? Well, let me just why isn't India taking any sides? Why India always refuses to take sides? Why always abstains from voting? At UN, whenever there is a voting, India always abstains. It stays neutral. It never aligns. It never picks a side. Is this because the diplomacy is weak? Actually, in order to, I cannot answer that question. In order to take a decision, here are the factors that India must consider before taking a stand, and that are energy security. India imports its 85% of energy, and any instability in the Gulf region directly affects India's kitchens, Indian markets. So, here is another question. A country which relies heavily of import of oil from the Gulf countries, do you think can ever take a stand whenever there is a crisis? It cannot upset the Middle East countries. Simultaneously, it has been put on sanction to buy Russian oil, and it cannot upset US because US is its biggest trade partner. The Indian diaspora. Okay, more than 9 million of Indian population lives in the Gulf. And not about Gulf, Indian population has spread all over the world right now. Okay, and India is very careful whether it should pick any side because people or the Indian diaspora living there gets directly affected. Their safety, their any escalation will directly affect the millions of Indians living abroad. Next factor India considers is the security factor. India is a very strong nation when it comes to army, but India is not a part of any military alliance, whereas China in itself is a huge strong country, advanced country when it's come to army or military. Pakistan on the other hand, it has been a pawn on the hands of USA. It has recently joined Turkey regarding NATO alliance. It hasn't directly joined NATO, it has joined Turkey, and Turkey is a member of NATO. So any attack on Pakistan would provoke Turkey to join, and if attack on Turkey, the other NATO members will be forced to join. So this means India most of the time carefully manages its diplomatic relationship. Economic growth and global trade. This factor is one of the biggest factor that India considers today. It recently signed the biggest trade deal with European Union, and it is also undergoing to sign a trade deal with the USA. It already has trading partners like India has spent around 500 million in the Chabahar port. India buys a lot of weapons from Israel, Russia, France. So India is dependent on China for rare earth minerals for manufacturing. India is a service output nation. That means India gives service to a lot of countries. The software service. So there is a lot of jobs that would go at stake if India picked a side aggressively. So maintaining diplomatic flexibility is a kind of difficult in this situation. Next and the final one is strategic autonomy. India has always preferred that it chooses its own nation's interest first, and it would decide what is important to the nation at the moment. It does not allow, but a lot of countries do interfere in India's strategic autonomy. India has not yet achieved strategic autonomy because of all the factors that I said. It's not still yet an independent economy. It depends on others, energy, service, jobs, diaspora. India tries to maintain independent diplomatic stance always. So here are some types of doctrines India follows when it comes to foreign policy, ideals that India follows. Panchil, the five virtues. In short, India would respect other sovereignty and in return, others would respect India's sovereignty. Second one, I have already, I think, told you non alignment movement. Third one would be multi alignment. Next one would be Gujarat Doctrine. It's about creating a peaceful neighborhood and to maintain a regional power balance. Next would be neighborhood first policy. It tries to strengthen the neighborhood and create a regional balance. I don't know how much successful is India in that because I think China is more successful than India in that. Next is Act East policy, a proactive approach to deepen trade ties or relationship ties with the Asian countries. Another would be, I think recently that policy has been developed by the Modi government. It's called the Modi policy or the Modi doctrine, where India maintains aggressive trade relationship approach. So the next time, if the question is why isn't India picking sides, maybe the question should be what is India currently navigating through right now? What are its constraints? What are the factors it's considering before picking a side? Because in geopolitics, no one is permanent friends or enemies. It's just permanent nations' interest, benefits. And the next is how long do you think can India keep balancing like this? Because the times are changing. There is a need to change of foreign policy according to the times. And if India ever changes its foreign policy of non alignment, what kind of impact is going to make on our generation? And is our generation ready to inherit that kind of world? So, the question of the moment is are we, as a next generation, prepared to inherit that kind of world where we have to navigate a lot of difficult questions if India ever ditched its non alignment movement? Anyway, that's Indian foreign policy in a nutshell. And I'm not here to give any opinion of if India is doing right or wrong. I'm just here to tell you to act independently, have agency, do not believe what media is showing you. Rather, ask your own question. Understand the point of this video was to let you know how a country shapes its foreign policy. So, see you next time.